Hi there, folks. Saber4 here. I wanted to come to you today as we are kind of jumping into some tournaments coming up. I wanted to share with you one of the things that I use in my testing, and this is what I think is going to be one of the guiding decks in the meta. And so this is my gatekeeper. If you're not beating this deck, then you are probably going to start looking at changing your ideas a little bit. And so today we're going to go meta decks, and this is part one. Jango Tarkintown. So what's going to be in here? What is Jango Tarkintown? Staple cards from 1 through 3. What are some of the new additions from Jump To Lightspeed? Some major combinations that we have. What are some possible weaknesses, decks that might give this one some trouble? Look at the turn 1 play, the mid game, the closers. Why is this a meta staple? I'll show you the week 1 deck that I've got right now, and not only that, but some of the sideboarding and things like that I'm play testing with to kind of use as different little flavors of Jango. All right, let's dive on in. If you haven't, please like and subscribe to the channel. We got a contest going on right now to give away some of the Tier 2 Prestige cards from the Carbonite packs, and you can find that on another video here. So, what is Jango Tarkintown? It's a very proven deck. From set 3, got some big improvements with Jump To Lightspeed, and we know him pretty well at this point. This is Jango, and when a friendly unit deals damage to an enemy unit, you may exhaust this leader if he's on his leader side. If you do exhaust that enemy, Tarkintown is a simple deal 3 damage to a damaged non-leader unit, and then when he is on his unit side, Jango allows you to do his same ability without an exhaust and to do it as many times as you damage enemy units. Stable cards from 1 through 3, things that we know very well: Elite P-38 Starfighter, Ruthless Raider, ISB agent with any kind of event, and things like Triple Dark Raid, Surprise Strike. You can throw in there Sneak Attack. You have Fett's Fire Spray, which is able to come out and come into play and ready the unit. It also has a very unused text. Well, I won't call it unused. A very limited use text that you can just exhaust a non-unique unit. So you have plenty of ways that this deck can slow things down and really kind of stall what your opponents are doing. New additions from Jump To Lightspeed. We got a few really big hits for Jango here. One of them I'll talk about in our sideboarding discussion, but these are the 3 big units that Jango got as tools. You didn't really have anything in the 4 spot for Jango in the previous iterations of the deck, and now we have IG-2000. Now we have something that's able to come out and ping 3 units and let us kind of choose what we want to exhaust if it is prior to the Jango flip, or if Jango has hit the board before IG-2000 does. You can deal 1 damage to 3 different units and exhaust all 3 of them. You have the War Juggernaut, something that gets +1/+0 for each damaged unit and can damage any number of units, including itself. It's also a red neutral, and so like in a heroism deck, you might come out with this and say, they hate that ship, and use it to shoot down the TIE fighters that it creates. So this is an absurd addition for Jango. But as crazy as that is, Devastator is an even bigger hit, because Devastator comes out with Triple Dark Raid, comes out with Sneak Attack. You can really make something pop with Devastator. Major combinations in here. One of them we already know: ISB agent plus any event is a turn 1 ping. And then you can use that turn 1 ping and turn it into Tarkintown and clear the board. One of the things that we really want to try and do in this deck is keep that opponent's board small. And it's very efficient at it, and very efficient at slowing down the other units, trading up into things because it's able to do pings on so many things. The current version of it, I am running with Bib Fortuna. He's not a must include, but Bib Fortuna allows my breakpoints to change because he reduces the cost of my events. And in doing so, he speeds up the turn in which I can put forth units. He's a shielded unit, which is just bonkers because he's hard to remove. He's not going to be able to be pinged and pushed off the board the same way that your unit might be if it is not shielded. But that allows you to do some things which are entirely crazy with Jango. Which means that on Triple Dark Raid, without his discount, 3 resources Triple Dark Raid, you could target your IG-2000. 4, you could target a Ruthless Raider or Juggernaut. And by 6, you could target Devastator, which means that if you manage to get Bib to stick, your 5 resource play, your Jango play, can be a Devastator, which is just crazy. Sneak Attack, you get a little discount by playing the card, but you still got to play a 2-cost event. And so very early, you could use something like Sneak Attack to bring out an Elite P-38 if you needed to. If your opponent dropped a couple of things that are 1 health, you could bring the P-38 out. You can clear 1. You can let it attack. You can then defeat it at the end of the turn and clear off the other one without sacrificing Tarkintown. 3 resources, you can use IG-2000. By 5, you can use the Ruthless Raider or War Juggernaut. And then by 7, you can pull Devastator with it. And it's especially effective if you have used Triple Dark Raid to get one of these that is not in your hand and then Sneak Attack with it that came from your hand. It's a very, very powerful combination that this deck is able to do. So what are some possible weaknesses of this? Han is a big problem for us, has been a big problem for us in the last couple of sets. Han plays tempo with you, and he can play that out of green or yellow. The bounce effects are a thing that you want to try to avoid, especially if you have used Triple Dark Raid or Sneak Attack, because now that ship that you pulled up and was readied is now bounced back to your hand or is exhausted and is going to be defeated. Commandeer, which is going to be in anything, which can be in anything yellow, is a counter to your unpiloted vehicles. It's allowing them to pull that vehicle across, use it to attack you, and then bounce it. And then the one that I've seen, I put Luke Skywalker here, but this is also true of Quinlan Voss, pinging down units, especially in conjunction with Tarkintown. Luke is very effective at this because he gets access. Well, anything red could get access, but Luke is very good at using things like Red 5, Hot Shot Maneuver, and just churning damage into some units and kind of clearing your board, making it where even though you're trying to keep them small, trading back into units is kind of difficult. And he likes to use a lot of small, cheap units, which means that they can, by the time Luke is flipped, they can play 2 or 3 a turn if they need to. So what are our turn 1 options? Well, that's kind of opposition dependent. Often the goal is to keep that board clear, but how we're getting there is important. Against something like Quinlan, CAD, or other majors, that really depends on your initiative. Like with CAD and Quinlan, you might be okay passing into them, moving to the next turn where you can start to bring out some of the big guns. Or you wind up with something like Crafty Smuggler. And Crafty Smuggler or Bib Fortuna come out shielded, and so it's not as easy for them to pop and clear your unit. Or against Ship Heavy, your best turn 1 play might be something like Shoot Down, which is currently in my sideboard, or ISB Agent plus Daring Raid and Preserve Tarkintown. You're going to use your Tarkintown strategically. Your deck has a lot of options to ping units. Your deck has a lot of options to put damage into things that you won't have to slam a unit into it first. And then taking down the turn 1 play, using it down the road will be a good option, especially if you have something that is a greater threat down the line in turns 2 or 3. Your turn 1 play into Han, you usually want to go ahead and put a unit down because he doesn't wind up pinging and removing units quite the same way. But he gets access to most of his major bounce effects starting on turn 2. And so we want to widen that board a little bit for him. You really want to choose your play kind of depending on what's best for your opposition. I said there's a lot of different things. Right now, I see the meta being very heavy with yellow red, just on both sides, heroism and villainy. It seems like it's going to be a common theme, but that's sort of just where we are week one. The mid game choices depends on what you've chosen for main deck, and we'll talk about that when we hit the sideboarding slide. Several ways to play it. I said that this one that we're going to see today has Bib Fortuna in it. It allows you to really jump on people with triple dark raid and sneak attack. It is vulnerable to the control and exhaust strategies because you're going to wind up having those units that you've played a card to get the card out, and you might be defeating it at the end of the turn if you've used sneak attack, and then you don't get to swing with it, and that's just not a great situation because you've traded 2 for 1. Pilots are in part of the sideboard and part of the option for when I'm testing this. They add some ping, they add some power, but they're weak to tempo plays as well. And then removal effects. You've got things, the access to shoot down, open fire, torpedo barrage. These can stretch you into the late game pretty well. Something like torpedo barrage is great for a wide board because it's 5 damage for 3 and can cause your opponents to have to kind of pick and choose where things go. Where open fire and shoot down are single target. So there are a lot of options out there for kind of how this deck flavors itself. What are our closers? Well, one of them was well known, and that's Ruthless Raider. Ruthless Raider was our greatest reach into control previously. With Bib Fortuna, I'm able to TDR this in as early as turn 2. Shows me 6 possible damage on the deploy turn, 4 damage on the swing, 2 damage on defeat. It takes about 8 actions if it was uncontested for this to defeat a regular base. And so even if you're playing this out early, you're still a long way from ending the game. But it's a nice swing to get ahead of early because you still have things like Jango to put on the board. You still have your turn 1 plays. You still have what you're going to get down the line. And so even if a Ruthless Raider that early doesn't stick, it still is going to kind of accelerate the clock. War Juggernaut is also a nice early target. War Juggernaut is capable of hitting at least as hard in its swing as Ruthless Raider, except that you're going to be able to spray more damage. Higher utility versus a wide board. If you see something that's just a lot of ships out there, this can either get really big if those ships have 2 health or more, or it can cause your opponents to really kind of make choices where they're trading some of those units into yours so that they crash one of those ships into yours to get rid of some things that are damaged. And then Devastator is the real reach that we added. I'm able to play this with TDR as early as turn 4 with Bib in play, but I usually am waiting to stretch that just a little further. It's 13 damage when I play Devastator if it's not answered, because it gets to pick 4, and that 4 indirect damage, if it goes to base and then it swings for 9, you're really accelerating what you can do with this. Why is this a meta staple? Well, as we said at the beginning, familiarity. This was not winning every tournament. This was showing very well, though, in the end of set 3. Very little has changed about its play style. And so much like Sabine in the first couple of sets, you didn't have to change the deck very much for it to become better. And so it's very likely that we're going to see people who are just familiar with Jango, understand how it plays, understand its role, know that it's gotten help, and so bring it to play with. The adaptability, as you'll see when I show you the sideboarding slide, there's a lot that you can change around this and make this a pretty variable deck. It operates it can operate very aggressively. It can turn the corner very well. It can come out and be just purely aggressive and play unit, and curve into its big things, or you can come out and play a little bit more removal, and then hit your big stuff as your board is stable. And then the sideboarding strategy is really very malleable to understand where you're going into the next thing. In spite of that, it is very linear. Uh, it's real easy. It really telegraphs itself a lot. Uh, but because of the number of vehicles that were added to this deck, it's incredibly rare to whiff on triple dark raid. Uh, it's hard to think that you're going to draw into a card that you just can't use. Uh, there's a lot of very safe turn one options, uh, including some of the removal, depending on the decks that you're seeing. And then it's explosive. Those closers provide you with reach very quickly. They provide you with a way to surge damage, and you can really kind of come from behind with this deck very quickly if you pull out Devastator on Jango's flip. You exhaust a board. You swing 9 damage into the base, and that's going to catch you up pretty fast. Uh, if your Jango flip turn, especially if you have Bib on the board, you can exhaust your opponent's board and still put 12 in between Jango and Devastator, and you really have an explosive flip. This is what I have right now. And I'm not going to go by every single card, but you can see in here some of the tools that we've got. I still have Daring Raid as one of the possibilities, though it is one of the things that I'm looking at reducing in some iterations of this. No Good to Me Dead is a definite use card because that can kind of slow down things like your Han flip. There are other answers that you have in here for Han. You also have Waylay as a kind of control card. If you do not have something that you're just ready to push in, but you need to get rid of a tempo play that your opponents have made, Waylay is in here. I do have one of my pilots that is still in the deck right now because I think that Dengar is one of the more interesting units. Boba Fett, the new Boba Fett, is also a quite interesting pilot to put in. But being able to put down something like Dengar and have an underworld unit and deal indirect damage. Boba does a similar thing where he's able to ping some indirect, or he's able to ping some damage as he flips into a pilot. Both of these are just great options. They can go on any vehicle. You can stick this on a War Juggernaut if you wanted to. So there's a lot of possibility here. But this is the deck that I've got right now. I trade out some of the things in the sideboard and test my decks against multiple versions of it. But this is kind of where I am week one. So the last couple of thoughts here, we're going to just glance at some cards that are in the sideboard and some that are other tweaks that you might want to look at. The sideboards are pretty straightforward. Force Choke is an event that I might wind up swapping out for Daring Raid. Even though it's one cost more, this is a great answer for Tech or DJ. It just clears them completely out of the way as a 2-cost removal option. Boba Fett, well-statted unit, able to clear board very easily with his on-attack ability. Darth Vader is if I have to put him to the ground, it's a nice big 7/7. But being able to put him in a vehicle, I can use this text to exhaust another vehicle and then attack and still attack a base with something that is now +3/+3, and do that early because he pilots for 3, and I have vehicle options that I can play on turn 1. The couple of things that I really wanted to talk about here, though, are the Hotshot Blaster is a possibility if you are seeing a more ground-heavy deck. This is going to allow you a little bit more of a stretch on the ground and going to be able to push your damage higher just by a static 2, and it's a tempo play by being able to come in and attack with the unit immediately. The super heavy ion cannon, you've got several transports and you have a capital ship. You've got plenty of targets for this to be put on, and exhausting a non-leader unit that the defender controls and dealing indirect damage equal to its power. This is a big boost to something if you've got an opponent that is trying to put some heavy space down, and you've got that unit exhausted and can drop this thing for 2. If they're still trying to answer, if they're still trying to do things, and you get an opportunity to claim with this, you can really put the screws down, because if you're attacking into the base with a Ruthless Raider or even IG-2000 and you are exhausting one of their units, dealing indirect damage, this is a big power play. And then finally, Chamsindula is a huge hit into anything that needs to ramp. Not only is he a 5 power unit on the ground, which means that he can clear things like Tech or DJ, he also allows an anti-ramp. And so if Han puts down that extra resource, you put down Cham, Han's resource is going to be defeated at the end of the turn. Yours is not. And so this is a great anti-ramp tool. And so Cham is one of those things that I've traded in and out of this deck so far, just kind of see where we are. But this is my look at the first big kind of meta deck for week 1. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments, and we will see you next time.